You're listening to Crazy Shit in Real Estate. You'll be amazed at all these wild but true situations that others have found themselves in. Because on this show, you'll hear uncensored, unbelievable stories from the world of real estate. I'm Leigh Brown. Let's dive right in. Before you get the rest of the story, I'd love to share a quick message from today's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Follow Up Boss, one of the leading CRMs, client relationship managers for residential real estate. Tons of top producing agents and some of the fastest growing teams out there are using Follow Up Boss to increase lead conversion, eliminate busy work that you're not doing anyway, and frankly, deliver a higher class experience in real estate to everybody who chooses you as their realtor of choice. So if you're going to keep listening to this, which I know you will, there's more information and a personal review of Follow Up Boss. For more information, go to followupboss.com/crazy. Hello, friends. I'm Leigh Brown, and this is Crazy Shit in Real Estate. Now, before you tune out, we are going to talk politics today, but it's a little different. We're not going to pick a fight over things in DC. We're going to talk with a realtor who has served as an elected official in local government to give you some insights on exactly what that looks like. So I've got John Blom with us today from Vancouver, Washington. You're going to enjoy this conversation with my friend John, and I'll see you on the other side. How are you? It's good to see you.
You too. Yeah, doing well. Almost done with Christmas shopping, so that's exciting.
Yeah, I told my husband last night, I'm like, you got to go pull the stash out of our stash closet so I can count and verify, because that's the hardest part.
We are in the middle of a bathroom remodel. So on top of everything else, we've moved out of our primary bedroom and of like dressers in the hallway, and only about a third of my regular clothes and Deborah's regular clothes fit into the guest room. And that also means there's no place to hide Christmas presents. So I have a very kind coworker who's allowing me to use her office as my hiding spot for all of Deborah's presents.
I love that. See, and people think realtors are cutthroat. Realtors would let you hide your Christmas presents in their office.
Absolutely. Yep.
I love that. But what are you thinking doing a remodel right now with the labor shortage and supply chain shortage? You guys are very brave.
Well, so in theory, we were going to be gone for 10 days in August, and the remodel was going to have a lot of it done while we were gone in August. And because of supply chain and labor and some of our own delays in picking things out. Actually, no, they were going to start when we were in Marco. So that was back in June. So yeah, we're just 6 months behind schedule, but we've been in our house 12 years. This is the last room that we are updating. Pretty much everything else is done. Nice. So it's 12 years in the making. So it's about time to finally just get it done.
And that means your wife gets the dream bathroom now, right?
Yeah. And that was... we were going back and forth on whether we were going to, like, how long-term this house was. So was it going to be just keeping things where they were and just updating finishes? Or was it going to be like a take it down to the studs, get our dream bathroom? And we ended up with taking it down to the studs and redoing everything. So
I love it. Okay. So when realtors remodel, it's a really big telling moment for what's going to happen in the market. So did y'all do the big grotto shower that you could zero entry roll into one day when you're in a wheelchair? How extensive did you go?
We didn't do the roll in just because our bedroom's upstairs. So if we need that, we're going to have to move at some point. Sure. But we did do, the shower is probably 4 feet by 8 feet, 2 wall shower heads, and then like this gigantic 2 foot by 2 foot rain shower from the ceiling.
Oh,
so it's, yeah, it'll be lots of tile.
That will be worth it when you're in there. And then because you use it every day, it dollar cost averages out. So it's not a big deal.
You know, I talk to clients, whether they're buying or whether they're doing a remodel, like you can't boil everything down to financial decision. Like some of it is just, do you want to enjoy it? You know, and especially in this market, you have to overpay sometimes. And can I say, yes, this house, absolutely, there's comps for it? No, but this is the neighborhood you want. This is the style you want. You're going to have a housing expense one way or the other. And this will actually bring you happiness and good memories with family. So not everything can be a financial decision. So this was definitely one of those that doesn't really make sense financially all the way, but will bring lots of joy and happiness over the next 15 years.
It's like swimming pools. You just gave the perfect description of swimming pools, and you're going to spend the money, but if you're going to use it, then that's on you. And if you don't get your money back, then you get the enjoyment out. So
Absolutely.
just like a master shower.
Yeah.
So since we just dove in talking, I think you should tell everybody who you are, where you're located, how long you've been in real estate, so they can meet John.
Absolutely. So my name's John Blom. I have been in real estate since 2009 here in Vancouver, Washington, which is actually nowhere near Vancouver, Canada. Vancouver, Washington is the original Vancouver. Vancouver, Canada came later. And we are right across the river from Portland. So I tell people we're actually closer to the Portland airport than the majority of Portland is. So great little spot here in Southwest Washington.
But do you say it like Dale Chumbley does with the Vancouver?
I do not. Dale's his own unique personality. We love Dale. I'm actually in the same office as Dale, so I get to see him quite a bit.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Well, see, you learn all kinds of things here on the podcast.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so you came into the business right when the market was still rolling downhill. So great timing. What were you doing before real estate that you said, hey, it's a recession, let me go sell some houses?
Yeah, I was in a really great spot. So I have a master's in history, and I always thought that I'd end up working in DC doing policy work along those lines. And I was for a while. I was working for the Army out of Fort Leavenworth, working remotely. So I was 12 years ahead of the curve on that one. So maybe behind on the real estate market, but I was doing the whole work remote thing 12 years ago. And it was really clear that the contract I was working on was going to go away. And we wanted to stay in the Northwest. So I thought, you know what, I think the market's going to turn around at some point. I thought it would flip a little bit quicker than it did. So I made the decision to go ahead and get into real estate. So I was working both jobs for a while. It was really an ideal setup. My job for the Army was I would get a topic to research and write on. And they wanted a rough draft in 4 months and then a final draft 2 months after that. So they didn't care when I worked, so I could show houses all day, come back 8 o'clock at night, start reading and researching, right till midnight, get up the next day and do it again. And everything was great. So I did both for about 3 years. And then I eventually reached the point where my business, our real estate business, was clicking along where I didn't need to have that steady income from the Army job. So left that, and I've been doing it full-time, since 2012. Well, probably doing it full-time since 2011, but stopped having 2 full-time jobs in 2012.
So I'm glad my teenagers are not behind the camera right now listening to this, because they would feel like they're very put upon at school with how quickly they have to turn out papers when you have months and months in the Army to get it done. No big deal.
These were 80 to 120 page. So this wasn't a 5-paragraph essay. One of them was on the Army's withdrawal from Vietnam. So in that 4 months, I went through about 10,000 pages of after action reports and then boiled it down to about 90 pages. So I'll include that scope so they have an idea of what exactly it takes 4 months to do.
Well, there you go. So now they won't fuss at their English teachers. All right. So you have done more than be a realtor, though. And one of the reasons I wanted you to come on the podcast is because you have made the big decision, alongside your wife, because it's not a decision anybody makes by themselves, to run for elected office. And you've won and been serving for several years now. So I'd love for you to tell the audience a little bit about how you came to the decision as a practicing realtor to go into politics, knowing that even if you're on the local level and it's nonpartisan, everything's partisan in some way, shape, or form. How did you come to that decision alongside your bride, thinking about your real estate clients and how you were going to be able to simultaneously do these positions?
So it was very much accidental the whole way. Probably, it was 2012, 2013 or so. One of my coworkers, the brokerage I was at, who'd been a long time volunteer at both the local and state association, told me that I was going to be a part of the local government affairs committee. So I started doing that for a couple of years, and sort of one thing led to another. Started to make connections through that. A few years after that, there was a vacancy on the county planning commission that I applied for and was appointed to, and did that for a couple of years. And then there was a opportunity to run for a county council seat in 2016, which I ran for at that point and won and served 4 years there. Last year, I lost re-election. I really believe that local government is very much nonpartisan. And so even though it's a partisan seat, I made the choice to run nonpartisan for a lot of different reasons. There were some things happening in our local party that I just didn't want my name affiliated with. But in the end, that really cost me. When it's a partisan race, especially in a primary, when you have hyper-partisan voters turning out for those, I ended up jokingly, we talk about it being roadkill. If you're on the right, you're safe. If you're on your left, safe. But if you're in the middle of the road, you're roadkill. So lost there. Then I ran this year for city council and lost a really, really close race, 33,600 votes cast, and ended up losing that race by 55. So really a testament that every vote really does matter.
Which is so hard for anybody to believe when they go to their local polling station and cast their vote. There's a lot of people that are a little defeatist about it. They're like, I'm going to throw my vote in, but what does it even matter? But you're in a sizable area. It's not like you're in a very remote county. It's a sizable area, and it still comes down to 55 votes. How did that feel when you're that close? What is the second guessing mechanism that goes on in your mind?
Well, and it's even harder than that because we vote by mail in Washington. I have voted by mail for the last 15 years. And so when you think about election night and you think about watching like the national elections where it's every half hour you're getting updates and you're saying, okay, Republicans took this seat and Democrats took this seat. Who's going to control the House? That suspense and that drama. In Washington, that plays out over a full week. And so they released an initial count of ballots on Tuesday night, election night. And I had a lead of 350 votes or so on election night. But then every day between 4 and 5 o'clock, they released the newest counts. And during that time, my lead of 350 went down to 150 and then went down to 70 and then went back up to 150 on Friday. And so I went into the weekend feeling pretty optimistic with a 150 vote lead. And the last count on the Monday after. So now this is 6 days after the election was in theory over. 6 days later, the final counts really come out and the lead was down to, the lead flipped. My opponent had me by 51 votes. So that then led to election phase 2, which is chasing ballots. So because everyone votes by mail, there's ballots that come in where signatures either don't match or it's just not clear if they match or not. So the county elections office puts out a list that candidates or anyone can get of here's the 350 votes that weren't counted. And so we started calling those folks and saying, hey, we're doing a post-election, follow-up poll. Who'd you vote for in the last election, John Blom or my opponent? And
so hang on a minute. They published the list of uncertain ballots and anybody can call them?
Yep, you can request it from the auditor's office and get the list. So we would call, and if they said they were a vote for me, then we let them know that, hey, did you know that there was an issue with your signature? Can we send a volunteer out to pick up your ballot? So we chased ballots for about a week and a half. To our local government's credit, they actually did a really good job of doing their own follow-up with election staff. So a lot of people had already got them turned in, but it means we kind of lost that advantage of really targeting who we were trying to go after. I was also able to work with the realtors to identify likely voters based on the voter data that the association has and our data strategies partners to target. Hey, we think that these, 180 or so are probably the most likely Blum votes to reach out to. So allowed us to really target our effort there. So in the end, ended up being about a wash in terms of the number of ballots that we were able to fix. But it's still, it's fun. It's democracy in action, going out and helping people get their vote counted. And some were obviously for me and some probably weren't in the end. But it was good to be a part of the democratic process.
Well, it's also a reason if you are listening to this or watching this and you can't stand those phone calls, then you maybe should take 2 extra seconds and fill your ballot out very carefully so that you don't get hammered by the phone calls that could happen in a race like this. Because I just sitting here thinking about all of the political calls I get. If my ballot were not correct and they published my name, it would be exponentially more. So slow down, people, do it right. All right. So considering this and what you've learned from going towards that independent space, what are the lessons you think we should all be taking away from this? And you and I have talked politics in the past, and we know that the biggest challenge we have across the country is the primary, because that's where the fringes are dedicated to the primary, and a lot of regular people wait for the general election. But when you wait for the general election and the fringes are out there angrily and excitedly hanging out in the primaries, that's how you wind up with a lot of candidates that are the lesser of two evil, when a good, solid independent or centrist or somebody with whom you might agree didn't make it through a primary because they weren't appealing to the edges. And it's definitely a challenge for anybody who says, man, the 2 parties we have currently don't necessarily speak for me. So what is the option for an independent candidate to win and change some of these paradigms and affect outcomes?
Yeah, it's hard. And I think it's a real challenge for our country for all the reasons that you mentioned. I think it does make it so important for people that are more in the middle or that aren't necessarily super active in politics to realize that the primary is where their voice often can be the most heard, because a lot of times in those primaries, you might have 2, 3, 4 candidates. And so if those centrists or those moderates on either side come out and rally around a more moderate candidate who isn't on the fringe one way or the other, that extreme vote is going to get split between a couple of other candidates. And so there's an ability there to have more of an impact. Also, turnout in the primaries is significantly lower. I mean, it was about 60% of the turnout in the primary compared to the general. And so that means each vote is worth a little bit more and can push that percentage a little bit more. So if you're someone who cares even just a little bit, make sure that you have that vote in the primary. Take the time to reach out and call candidates. I know in Washington, they publish a voter's guide that has contact info for the candidates. I'm always shocked at how few people actually reach out and call. I probably got 15 to 20 phone calls with people wanting to ask questions. Total. And then make sure that you're asking questions that are relevant to the position. Of those 15 to 20 calls, probably half of them wanted to talk about things that were like completely out of the scope of my role or my desired role as a city councilor. I have no say on what happens with the January 6th investigation as a Vancouver city councilor. So we can talk about that all you want, but that really has nothing to do with the job that I'm hoping to do and the public service that I want. So just take a couple minutes, or even just ask the candidates, hey, what do you want to do in this role? Why does this role matter? Or what is this role? If you don't know what school board member or what a county commissioner does, ask them and say, what does this position do? And why do you want to do it? And why are you the best candidate? And if they don't take the call, or if they don't have a good answer, then that's pretty informative for you. So take that time, do the research, and it doesn't take long. A quick 5-minute phone call, and you can tell quite a bit about a candidate.
Okay. So I told y'all that I would do a review of Follow Up Boss, because I'm your friend in real estate, and I did. Now, there's a blue million CRM out there. I mean, if you go to any Facebook group, every realtor's like, which one should I use? Which one should I use? And you know that these CRM, which are client relationship managers or customer relationship manager, whatever you want to call it, it's truly a system that's just designed to help you know what to do next, because you're very busy and you're a multitasker in real estate. And with all those different tasks and balls up in the air, you need something to help you stay on track. And that's what Follow Up Boss does. Now, when you save a name and a phone number in there, that is basically a Rolodex. Follow Up Boss is going to take the names and phone numbers and also help you know what to do next. So you can maintain these relationships with your neighbors, because that's what this is about. Real estate is not about serving just prospects and clients. It's about taking great care of your neighbors' needs in real estate. And if you'll use a tool like Follow Up Boss, where they remember you, they might even call you when they're ready to buy or sell again, or when their mom and daddy do, or their best friend or their kid, and you want to be top of mind, that's what a product like Follow Up Boss will do for you. Truly, it's going to change your business when you start paying better attention to people. They don't have to know you use Follow Up Boss, but they'll totally understand that they are being heard by you. So now there's a free trial for my people because you're loved. Go to followupboss.com/crazy. No credit card is required. And frankly, because you're my people and we made an ask for you, Follow Up Boss said, yes, you get double the free trial. That's actually enough time to log in, put some pieces in it, and watch it change your business as it has for so many realtors and teams nationwide. Again, go to followupboss.com/crazy to start your free trial today. I think people are afraid that when they call, they're going to get stuck in an hour-long dissertation of somebody's beliefs. But as you know, time is really limited. And as a candidate, you can probably distill what your thought processes are into just a couple of minutes if somebody would pick up the phone. But you said 15 or 20 in the whole campaign process?
Yep.
Look, y'all, that's on us that we're not talking to our candidates more, and especially in the local level, because everybody can establish their opinion in the federal side because there's so much media coverage and there's so many pundits out there with opinions. You can get some information and sort through, but you get down to the local level and so many voters go to their ballot and say, well, that name looks familiar. I'll just pick this one, or they just start picking names. But that's the person that's closest to you at home making the most decisions. I'd love to know, in your time as an elected official, what decisions or issues came up that would impact real estate, housing, that the public is not paying enough attention to, but would impact them as well? Is there anything in specific that if a realtor is watching or listening to this, they should be watching for in their municipality, or the same thing for our non-realtor viewers and listeners who just happen to be interested in what they can do better?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, do we have time for two stories?
Absolutely.
All right, so two stories. One, probably more driving real estate is land use. And we have really, really tight land use policies in Washington in terms of growth management. And often I think realtors get viewed by the public as being just pro growth and sprawl and just more houses, more houses, more houses. Whereas, you know, that we're really, as an industry, focused on smart growth. We want sustainable communities. We want good transportation options. We want multimodal transportation options where those make sense. We want livable communities. We want good schools. We want neighborhoods that are going to be desirable, because that's ultimately what drives people to want to move and live in a certain area. It doesn't matter if you have 10,000 houses that are available. If no one wants to live there, they're not worth anything and we can't sell anything. So we want quality communities. So we had quite a bit of land within, it gets a little technical here. Basically, we had land where the city had the opportunity to expand, or the county could actually expand, but we had to put together a funding package to make sure that we could make those investments in infrastructure, in the roads that needed to be there. There was an interstate interchange that needed to be improved. Just a lot that needs to go in to support those communities. And so it was really a collaborative effort with the building community and the development community of how can we put together a funding plan that makes sense, where the public is paying the appropriate share and then the private sector is paying the appropriate share. But in this case, really what made sense was to look at an increase in traffic impact fees to help pay for that. And the development community was totally on board with that, because we worked with them through the process and said, okay, we have this state funding requirement where we have to have, it was like $160 million that we could show where we were going to get that budget. We're going to bring in a certain amount through the road fund, which is a property tax that's paid by all county residents, but we need to have some kind of private investment too. And that's where it made sense to do impact fees. So
what is a traffic impact fee? Is that like?
Okay, yeah, that's every time a builder comes in and pulls a permit for a house, they pay a fee that goes, and it's very strictly set aside for transportation improvements. And so in this case, it was $900. Well, it was at $500 or $600, and we moved it up to $900. And again, with collaboration of the four largest developers that had a lot of this land, said, yep, we can make that work, because we know we own this land, but we can't develop it until the county comes in and puts in the infrastructure. So this is how we can help pay for it. And knowing that the county is also going to be a partner bringing in road fund dollars, as well as leveraging that against grants and things like that. So there was a little more to it. They also agreed to prepay some of those. So, we'll go ahead and front basically a couple $1 million of what we would be paying later when we pull permits, because that allowed the county then to have the opportunity to take that money up front and go out and get matched grants from the state, from the federal government, to be able to build these roads. So that was a simplified version of it, but it was really working with the county's planning staff and the private sector to say, okay, we all want the same thing. We have a housing shortage here in Clark County. We're about 3,000 units short of where we need to be, just based on population growth over the last 5 years. And one of the ways to address that is by opening up some land availability. But doing that, boy, these headphones are really terrible.
You sound good on my end.
Perfect. Well, they just keep falling out. We need that land availability. And so this was a way that we were able to partner and work together to get that done. So that was probably the biggest the biggest decision that made over the last 4 years when I was serving, as far as addressing real estate. One of the things, though, that I was really, really proud of, and it's a small thing, but it shows how local government can do little things that make a big difference. Early on, it was probably 2017, my first year, we heard a report from our local Commission on Aging talking about pedestrian access and the challenges in some of these neighborhoods where you might have a house that backs to a road where there's a transit stop, but that owner may have to walk half a mile out to the front of the neighborhood to be able to get to that bus stop that's right behind their house. And so as we were doing in the same area, actually, as we were looking at how do we fund this, there's always give and take in terms of the county's going to provide some things, developers are going to provide some. Well, something that was really important to me was pedestrian access, and how do we address that? So we put in requirements in the developers agreements in this land that we were bringing into the urban growth boundary for increased pedestrian access. So if the area back to a major arterial that at some point will likely be served by transit, that there had to be pedestrian access. And in doing that, then we also gave some incentives to the developers, where if that's where the trail, the little walking path is that connects from the street to the primary street, we reduced setbacks. and reduce lot coverage. So saying, okay, you're going to have to put in this little 4-foot trail to connect the end of the cul-de-sac to the street, but that 4 feet isn't going to count against your lot size or in your building area in that lot. So you can get the same number of lots. You're not going to impact your development and your pro formas, but you're going to make a more walkable community. So we use that area as sort of a test bed for this policy. And then in 2020, we expanded that to all new developments. So now every new development that goes through the process in Clark County is going to have requirements for pedestrian connectivity, so that if there's a long stretch where there's no vehicle access, there's still going to be spots where pedestrians can get through. So we're making more walkable communities. That'll make it easier for folks to, if they want to take transit, get there and eliminate some of that walking distance. So it's a really small thing, but if you look at transit, like that first mile, last mile, it's a really big deal. And so just little things like that, understanding how communities happen, development happens, how neighborhoods come together, having that background knowledge, I think, really helped me to make some policy changes that, the developers aren't thinking about it because they're just trying to make it work on their end and dealing with all the challenges they have. And planners aren't necessarily thinking about, well, how can we make this a win-win? So being able to have a foot in both worlds, so to speak, I was able to bring some things forward and move things along.
Well, what you're describing are proactive decisions, because when you see in a reactive space, going back and putting in that walkway is going to be the harder part, except when it's in the platting process and the developer's putting it together. When you're proactive and you can see that there's a way to fix this for all parties, that's a big win. But it's also a chance for all of us to remember that before you yell and scream about the developer coming into your community, you need to go to the planning meetings and find out, what is that developer doing? Because I know that in my area, developers are heavily involved in sidewalk access. They're involved in green space. They're involved in protecting and preserving tree cover. They're doing a lot of things that are going to benefit the community in the long haul. But if all you look at is, but they're putting 300 houses in, you might miss some of those really impactful decisions that are being made. And like you said, it's in collaboration with the local elected leadership and the developers, because every developer should make a profit or they won't keep developing.
Right.
By the same token, we need to have good decisions made for our communities. And in fact, when you describe any neighborhood and you're talking about pedestrian access, I can imagine that's probably a diverse price point socioeconomically, because when you look at what needs to get built in every community, it's not just one kind of neighborhood. It's
right.
Diversity from price point and from style and for demographic group reach. There's all these different reasons we need a really good diversity of build, and what you're describing here allows that to happen. So I think it's fantastic to see creative solutions. And you're right, it's not very sexy and it feels small because it's not going to hit the mainstream news, but it's going to impact a lot of lives in a day-to-day fashion. And isn't that why we do what we do?
Yep, absolutely.
So in your time as an elected official, are there any moments when you wish you hadn't done it, or has the good always outweighed the bad in doing local politics?
I think overall the good has definitely outweighed the bad. I mean, in any job, there's going to be moments. I'm sure there's moments in your real estate career where you're thinking, why didn't I just get a nice 9 to 5? No one calling me.
I offered to turn my license in again yesterday, but nobody would take it.
You get those calls at 7 p.m. on Saturday and a deal's going sideways. And you're like, maybe a 9 to 5 isn't so bad. But on the whole, and looking at the big picture, I think one of the biggest reasons I'm glad that I did it is the experience that my kids have had with it. And that's maybe a funny thing to say, but like my son, Isaac, is 7, and he has already worked out the math as to when's the first year that he could run for president, based on he knows you have to be 35 and he knows elections are every 4 years. So he's worked out that math.
So what year is it, John? When can Isaac run for president?
He can run, now, so 2020. So it would be, I want to say it's 2040 would be the first year that he could run. No, it'd be 2044.
All right, people, hit the comments if you're going to back Isaac when he runs for president. I love that that's one of your side effects. What else is it?
Just their awareness of what's going on, their opportunity to just meet other local leaders. Like, they get local government probably better than most folks.
Your teachers probably don't get it as well as they do.
What's that?
Your civics teachers don't get it as well as they do.
No, I mean, they've had breakfast at our house with the mayor where she brought, fresh fruit and some quiche. And so we've just sat down and had those opportunities to do that. Connections throughout the community. I found, especially my first campaign, you see the best and the worst of people in campaigns. I had people that I had never met that just really nice notes along with their contributions or said, hey, I don't have any money, but can I come out and sign wave, or can I help you build signs? Like these people that shared my beliefs in terms of wanting to make Clark County a better place and were willing to give what they had, whether, for some folks that was money and that was a contribution. And for others, it was a couple hours on a corner with a street sign waving and just did those get out the vote activities. So really seeing that there's a lot of people that really care about our community and want to give, if they're just asked. So make that ask.
So, of course, losing by this many votes hurts. Will you run again? And if so, is that going to be now, or do you breathe for a minute? Because I'm sure that's a question you're asked all the time. And I know that in realtor world, we love having elected realtors out there because you're able to, as you said, bridge that gap between people who know exactly what the impact is going to be and the ones that haven't seen it yet. So what's the forecast?
I always hesitate to say, I can say fairly confidently, I've always sort of had two tracks that I've looked at, and one is public service, and I've had some amazing opportunities there, but there's some great opportunities in the realtor world too. So I'm taking this year to kind of just sit and focus on career and family, but I would really like the opportunity to serve, especially at the state association level. So may have some news about Washington Association of Realtors and positions there in the next year or so.
Well, on behalf of all the realtors who have supported you in your races, I'm grateful that you have served and been willing to serve, because you've laid a pathway for a lot of other people who've taken the risk of filing for office and run. And for those of y'all that didn't know, in 2020, there were more realtors elected around the United States than ever before, because what better kind of person to be in a local elected office or state elected office than a person who understands the impact of all of the roads and the DOT issues and the schools and the zoning and all of the layers that are involved, but realtors. And so I'm grateful for the trails that you've blazed and will continue to blaze.
Well, thank you. None of it would have been happened without the realtor family. I mean, that's where I got kind of started down this path, and support from the PAC was really a big reason why I won the first time. So we talk about the Realtor Party, vote, act, and invest. I mean, it was 55 votes. I'm sure there's probably 55 realtors that didn't vote. So
we won't talk about them. They know who they are.
We won't talk about that. But I know realtors do vote at a higher percentage than the general public. So keep doing that. Get involved in local campaigns. If you're not someone who wants to put out there and put your name in there, find a good candidate who shares your beliefs and get involved, and then make those contributions, those investments. At
least show up at the planning commission meetings or planning and zonings and stay informed about your community so that you could be a source of knowledge, if not the vote at the table. And John, if somebody's looking for an amazing realtor in Vancouver and they want to support your real estate business by calling you as a buyer, seller, or referring agent, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
So our website is www.blomteam.com. And you can get connected with myself or my amazing wife, and my sister works with us as well. So we have great, you can interview all three of us and take your pick of who's the best fit for you, or you can give me a call, 360-977-8329. So happy to help you get connected here. Southwest Washington is a great spot to live. No state income tax. So if you are retiring and you want to make a little more money on your retirement, come on over to Vancouver.
Look, you're trying to compete with Texas and Tennessee and Florida. It's a pretty smart move to make. We wish North Carolina would go there, but we still have a state income tax for now. So here we are. And don't stress out, because if you didn't write down all of those informational pieces, or you're not sure how to spell Blom, it's like Bloom, but take away an O. And all of John's links are in the show notes for this episode. So you can feel free to go connect and ask some questions. And maybe you're the person who's thought of running for office and you want to talk to somebody who'll shoot you straight. John is absolutely that kind of a resource. And I'm glad to call you a friend, and I'm glad that you're a realtor champion. So let me know how I can support you in the future, and y'all go support him in the same way. Some nice things in the comments, because that's how we roll over here.
Awesome. Thank you, Leigh. I really enjoyed it. Good seeing you.
All right, guys, 5 stars, subscribe for more, and we'll see you on the show next time. Okay, now don't forget to go try Follow Up Boss so that your business can continue to expand in professionalism, and then you can meet some more crazy people yourself. I really appreciate Follow Up Boss sponsoring this episode, but mainly I appreciate them for giving y'all double the free trial time with no credit card required. So make sure you go to followupboss.com/crazy and then let me know what you think. I'll see you guys next time. As always, I'm so super thrilled that you joined in for more crazy shit. And if you're a realtor, investor, inspector, lender, or just a regular human being who happens to have an unbelievable story that you need to tell the world about, or frankly, you just need to one-up the story you just heard, then make sure to DM me on Instagram at Leigh Thomas Brown, or tweet me at Leigh Brown, or frankly, any social network where you hang out. I'm there. And if you had some fun, then you totally want to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.